One of the reasons, as I've been saying, we share dreams is to inspire other people to dream for themselves. But also, as they share their dream and their vision, you might be thinking to yourself, I think I might have the same dream. I want to follow them in the dreams that they have for this particular place. Or maybe you start to have dreams for, if you're not from the Chester Springs area, or if you're outside of that kind of 15-minute commute, you start to see in Phoenixville what God is doing. And it doesn't mean that you go plant a church necessarily, although we are part of a church planting movement. It might simply mean that you put your roots in deeper. You start a group. You see God draw people into that group, and you see the group multiply. So now one group is two groups, and just see what God does with your dreams and with your desires. So a lot of you know that my wife and I actually planted a church for a couple of years, started a new church in Grand Rapids. And it was a time in my life where I was doing anything I could to make money. I've shared how I would mow lawns. One day I found myself on the roof with this kid named Michael. I say kid, he was younger than me. Maybe I was 27 and he was 21, or I don't know, something like that. He didn't know anything about God. He didn't know anything about the Bible, but he loved the group Mumford and Sons. You know who I'm talking about? And we started to talk about the themes in some of their songs, and that led to me explaining to him the good news about Jesus. And he had no schema for it. He maybe went to Catholic Mass a couple of times as a kid, but he didn't have any schema for the Bible or anything. And as we continued to meet over, I think it was probably coffee at Panera, because I could get in and out of Panera for $1.06, because I would just buy a bagel with butter, and then I could sit with someone for $1.06 with the tax back in those days. And cream cheese is really what makes a bagel expensive at Panera. Anyway, so he described his life like John 3 describes his life. It's like I'm brand new. I don't know what else to say. It's like I've been born again. It's like I have this new life inside of me. And he wanted to share this with his dad, who had no relationship with Jesus. So he said, I opened up the Bible. It was kind of in the middle, and I found this book called Proverbs. And it seemed like there was some really good stuff in there. So I opened it up and I left it on his desk. Of course, it's Proverbs. It's not Proverbs. And I don't say that to make fun of him. It's just like this sincere, brand new, eager faith that as the Murrays and the Hesses and other people start to invest in neighborhoods, you're going to find people who respond to Jesus with this new eagerness. But he's right. There's a lot of good stuff in the book of Proverbs. There's some really hilarious stuff in the book of Proverbs as well. I found this proverb last night. It basically says, you're better off living alone in the corner of the attic than living in a nice house with a quarrelsome spouse. I think that's funny. But what should be the next verse, which isn't there, that is, if you share this verse with your spouse, you won't end up in the attic, you will end up in the doghouse. So take that for what it's worth. But there's several little kind of almost always 2-line proverbs in the book of Proverbs. And if you're reading through the Bible, you'll get to Proverbs and it's overwhelming to look at even a full chapter of them, because they just keep coming at you. So we're going to pick out a couple of proverbs this morning as we talk about dreams, how to pursue them, and how to find them or uncover them. We're going to start in Proverbs 13. If you have your Bibles, verse 12. It says here, hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a dream fulfilled is a tree of life. Now, I always thought that first part of the proverb was about falling in love. And I guess this goes back to my high school years, because I knew what heartache was. I knew what it was like to really, really like a girl, but they didn't like me back. And I thought that it was always one directional, but it turns out there were girls that liked me, and I was clueless. But you know that feeling, right? The idea of a sick heart where you want something and you're not getting it. It's either delayed, or maybe sometimes the things that you long for never come, like a girl you liked in high school, or a guy that you were attracted to in college. But this opens up for me at least, the understanding like there's an ache when you want things, when you have to wait for the things that you want. And that's just true about our experience. The things you ache for, the things that cause you heartache are the things that you really want or long for. So it might be relationship with a cute girl if you're a high schooler, but it might be something else. You might be aching to have children and you're having trouble doing it. You might be aching to be debt-free and you see that the path is long and it's not going to be something that you can write a check next month and be out of debt. It's going to be 3 to 5 years. You might be aching for your grown children to come back to church because something happened in their 20s and they ran off and started pursuing, some things that they thought the world could give them, but they're coming up empty. Or you maybe are aching. I had this experience this past week. As I remember I shared about one of my grandparents, I actually felt my heart ache to see her again. And some of the good news that we find in the Bible because of Jesus is that when people turn to him and the life that he gives is eternal, right? It's not just for this kind of body, but it's for a new body. And it's not just for this time, maybe the 60 to 100 years you have on this earth, but it's forever. And so the ache that you feel is actually the desire, I think, wanting to express itself. Then it says, but a dream fulfilled is a tree of life. And this tree of life language is something we'll come back to at the very end. But it got me to thinking about how trees relate to dreams. I don't know why exactly, but my dad owned a tree service. So I think about trees a lot. But if you think about the roots of a tree, it's the place that you draw life from. And if you think about this, each one of you is always drinking. It doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're at work, you're drinking. The things that are happening at work are being pulled kind of into your being, into your soul. If you're watching Netflix, this is being absorbed into your life, right? You always hear about how influential friends are and how you behave and how you think, right? So the friends that you choose are an influence on your life. And so you're soaking up kind of their values and their behaviors. And then maybe you're drinking from the Bible. Are you drinking from the Bible once a day, once a week? Where is your nutrition coming from? If you're here in church, you're in church and you're drinking something up, hopefully, that'll not just go over your head or through one ear and out the other, but will actually shape who you are, become a part of who you are. And so if you're noticing that maybe you're having trouble dreaming, or maybe the fruit of your life isn't what you want it to be, the first place to look is where you're drawing life from. Where are your roots put down? Because, as I said, your roots are going to be put down somewhere, and it might be, the magazines that you're reading, or it might be the advertisements that you're hearing. And if you're soaking up what the culture says, right, that's getting broadcast through our media, it's going to cause a shopping frenzy here in about a month, right? There's like the places that you're drawing life from affects the trunk, right? The trunk of your life is like the core of your being, the values you have, the beliefs you have, and the passions you have. That gets expressed then into the branches of your life, or the arenas of your life, right? You have a job, right? This is an arena. You have family, you have hobbies, you have places that you volunteer. Now, the interesting thing about the branches of your life is that sometimes these branches get cut off, right? You lose your job, or you change hobbies, or your family changes because you have a baby, or it changes because your kids move out of the house. Hopefully someday, that's the idea, right? So certain branches of your life might get cut off, but the core of your being, while it's being affected by where you draw life from, where your roots are planted, the branches can change. But then when we think about dreams, I wonder if dreams are like the flowers that bloom in spring. And I wonder if a decent definition of a dream is like the desires you have that bloom. so to speak. Like it's hard, bloom maybe is not quite the right word, but if you can imagine a desire in your heart, like coming out, like if a desire is given voice and you can see something in the future, like those are the dreams we have. But then often there's a period of waiting between the dream, right, and the fruit. If you see a tree full of flowers, full of blossoms in the spring, you know that those blossoms will, well, they'll pollinate and then they'll start to form the fruit. So the fruit is like the fulfillment of that dream. And here Proverbs says the dream that is fulfilled is like the tree of life. And you can examine kind of each part of the tree and realize that, you know, my values and my passions will lead into the arenas that I choose to be in, will bloom into the dreams that I have maybe for my family or the dreams that I have for my career. And again, if you don't like the fruit that you're getting, maybe you need to trace back to the dreams that you have, the arenas of life that you're living in, the values and principles, or maybe it's all the way down to the roots. Because if you're having trouble dreaming, or if you're having trouble even narrowing down where you want to dream, like it's a good idea to examine kind of the trunk. And I don't mean necessarily just for bad, but if you want to dream, you should think about what you're passionate about. And if you don't like the fruit of your life, maybe you need to do some pruning. If all the fruit of your life just kind of doesn't seem substantial, maybe you've actually put out too many branches. Maybe you've found yourself in too many arenas, so there's not enough space or energy to actually put enough into a particular dream or desire or passion. Is this making any sense, or is this just because my dad was a tree service guy? Man, never work for a tree service. They're the worst. I mean, it's hot and it's loud and it's noisy and it's dirty and it's all those things. And my dad would agree with me, so I'm not, speaking against him. So the idea that our lives are like trees and the dreams we have, we hope turn into fruit down the line. But how do we actually bridge that gap between bloom and fruit? Well, let's look at Proverbs chapter 21, verse 5. Here it says, good planning and hard work lead to prosperity, but shortcuts or impulsivity leads to poverty. And I don't think it's just talking about money. I mean, of course, at one level it's true if you say impulsivity will lead to poverty, because if you see something you like and you don't have a plan to pay for it, what do? You put it on a credit card, and then the credit card company takes 20% a year on the interest that you earn. So like if you buy something that there's not budget for, that will lead to poverty. But if you go after things in your life that you don't have energy or time for, you'll find, again, like a poverty of being or a poverty of time. This is an interesting passage because it kind of marries the idea of dreaming, which is kind of a heart thing, a desire thing, what do you want, with the you got to do what it takes to actually make these dreams come true. And what are those things? Good planning and hard work. So you have those are like mental energies. So you have the heart and you have the mind coming together here. And a good plan is come up with a strategy. Think forward, think ahead. Don't only live in the moment, but think about what you want in the next year or 5 years or 10 years. Because just like money needs to be budgeted, time needs to be budgeted too. You know what they call that? A calendar. Calendar is like a budget for your time. And if you try to spend time that's already been spent, you find yourself double booked. And you can't, at least I haven't figured out how to be in two places at once. I listened to an interesting TED Talk about this, and the commodity of time, and the speaker encouraged the people to write next year's Christmas card this year. Do you know what I mean? So not a lot of you probably write Christmas cards. Anybody write Christmas cards? Facebook has been very hard on the Christmas card, because it used to be if you wanted an update on somebody's life, you had to wait till Christmas, and then they would write all the highlights of their life. And then they put it in an envelope. Do you guys know what that is? And stamp it and mail it. An envelope, it looks like this. This is an envelope. Anyway. Today, maybe it's the end of year Facebook highlight reel, okay? So what I'm asking you to do and to think about is, so Christmas is coming and you're gonna be thinking about this past year's highlights. But I actually want you to think of 2020's highlights in advance. What do you want to end up on your Christmas card? I've been thinking about this for myself. Like, we have goals for some renovation in our home that are not too lofty because we don't want to spend a lot of money on the home this year. We've spent plenty the last 2 years. I want to visit my brothers at some point. A couple years ago, we did a 3-on-3 basketball tournament. It was just a world of fun. And, we live by an international airport. I can, turn some credit card miles into flights. Like, I'd love to go see them this year and maybe make that a yearly thing. But what is it for you? If you were to think about the year 2020, what would you want? What would you dream about? And then you know what you do? You write those down. In fact, I would encourage you, the Connect cards have some lined space on them. Write down the dreams you have for 2020. And then share those dreams with a friend, with a brother, with a sister, with a spouse. And then budget for those dreams. It might be financial, or it might be, and I would say it includes calendaring. So maybe just consider turning the dreams you have for 2020, just as Proverbs 21 says, put in some planning and work into seeing these dreams come. Put those dreams in your calendar. Put those dreams in your budget. This is wisdom. And I want to back up again and say, like, Proverbs, the wisdom nuggets here are not the way to good relationship with God, okay? You might say, I suck at planning. That doesn't mean God won't accept you. These are wisdom literature nuggets to help you live a life that is prosperous, that will help you move toward the dreams that you have for your life. But if you blow it, there is forgiveness and acceptance from God. You must know that you do not earn God's favor or his love. If you've blown it, if you feel like a tree that has been cut off at the trunk, know that God is in the business of bringing life out of the stump. That is the imagery that Jesus and God speak about when he looks at his people and sees, oh, they've been reduced to a stump. I will bring a shoot out of that stump. I will bring life where there is death. Okay, so maybe you suck at planning, but maybe you'd like to be better at it. Proverbs 20, no, this is back to Proverbs 12, verse 15. Fools think their own way is right. Right? Don't you think you're right about most things? I think I'm right about most things. But the wise listen to others. This doesn't mean go with the flow. This doesn't mean see what everybody's on Facebook is doing and do that. It means look for the people who have the fruit in their life that you want in your life. And ask them how they got there. If you have financial goals, find people who have prospered financially. If it's, man, these people seem like they have a lot of fun. Or they have a really good marriage. They have a lot of fun in their marriage. Go and ask them. The wise listen to others. Okay, number 4. Proverbs 16, verse 3. Commit your actions to the Lord, and your plans will succeed. This is actually the opposite of what most of us do. Most of us try to commit our plans to the Lord, to God, and then we ask him to have our actions succeed. So we say, God, I would really like to do this. Please make it happen that this works out, right? Or maybe we even get into bartering. Say, God, I would really like to marry this girl or get this job. And if you give me this job, then I promise to go to church every week or something. Whatever it is, I'll give up Xbox. I don't know. right? That's actually the opposite. This is saying commit your actions. Like actually trust God with your entire being. The trunk of your life, the branches of your life, the things that make up the substance of your life, commit every part of it to him. And it says then like the plans will succeed. And success doesn't necessarily look like what you think it is. Like real success is not necessarily having more money or retiring at age 55. Like the real plan, the real success, the real purpose is that you are shaped through good times and through bad times to be more like the person of Jesus. Because he is the picture of what it means to be perfectly human and perfectly whole. In Proverbs 13:2 again, it says, "Hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a dream fulfilled is a tree of life." This imagery of the tree of life is something that shows up in the Bible not very often, but it shows up in Proverbs, and it shows up in Genesis, which is the first book of the Bible, and it shows up, you know where else? In Revelation, which is the last book of the Bible. And it becomes a symbol for, in Genesis, the life that God gave them in a perfect, unpolluted, untainted world. And a life that not just gave food, but gave shelter, that gave protection, that gave security, that gave shade, that if Adam and Eve were to eat from that tree, they would live forever, right? And then in Revelation, we see like this picture of a universe restored, and it says that there's actually two trees of life, one on each side of the river of life, and that its leaves are for the healing of the nations. And that's an ache that God has for our world. And you see even just our nation and the healing that it really could use in 2019. But then in the middle, and it says this in 1 Peter chapter 24, Peter says this: "He, Jesus, personally carried our sins in his body on a tree, so that we can be dead to sin and live for what is right. And by his wounds, not just the nations are healed, but you are healed." You see what happens here? Peter calls the cross a tree. And our tree of life was Jesus' tree of death. His death leads to our life. He suffers on a cross in a moment, is abandoned by God so that we could live forever with him and experience the peace and the prosperity and the dreams come true of what perfection might be. And so the worship team is going to come up, and we're going to do something that we do once a month. I want to invite you to stand. We're going to be taking communion. And we do this because on the night before Jesus was betrayed, on the eve of him hanging on that tree, where he dies so that you might live, he invites his closest friends together for a meal. And he takes bread and he takes juice, and he says about the bread, "This is my body given for you." And he says about the juice, or the wine, "And this is my blood shed for you." And as you come forward, you can take a cup and a piece of cracker and bring it back to your seat. I want you to just not just be waiting in line, but think about the hopes you have that are deferred, that you're waiting to see come to be. Maybe even let your heart ache a little bit for the things that you want. And then let your heart ache for the thing that we all really want, which is an eternity living under the trees of life, beside the river of life, where every tear is wiped away and there's no pain and there's no reason to cry. And once you've all taken and are back in your seats, we'll take it together, because as you look around the room, you see actually people from which you draw life, like the roots of a tree. One of the functions of the roots of a tree is that when the wind blows, the tree can stand. With no roots, when the wind blows, when suffering comes, when difficulty comes, there's nothing to keep you standing. And so we'll take it together to just remind each other that at some level we are here to shape us as a community, to feed each other's souls, but also to hold each other up. And so come forward to the front. There's a table or two tables in the back.